Hello and welcome. This is a Public Affairs Forum sponsored by the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Austin, Texas. My name is Luther Elmore. These Public Affairs Forums have been held by this church since 1954. As far as we know, it is the longest standing Public Affairs Forum in the state of Texas. However, things have changed some since 1954. We used to hold these weekly, and now we try to hold them once a month. Normally, this is on the second or third Sunday, and so please check our church website, which is at austinuu.org, for that information. Today, we're very honored to have Mr. Jim Hightower with us, and to introduce him as one of our Forum Committee members, Richard Halpin. Richard.
Put the words I wanted to say to you on my phone. I'm not a Luddite, no matter what anybody tells you. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, deciders of our voters who are deciders of our future. We are very fortunate today to have an extraordinary son of Texas to speak with us. Not only an award-winning journalist, successful, progressive elected official, campaign manager for several of our best national leaders, we have a man who speaks to the real issues that we people live daily. Congressman Dennis Kucinich said about our guest today, quote, "Clear populist with a lifelong history of unambiguous advocacy of popular principles." Boy, isn't that a mouthful? Here's what I say. This people's champion is a profound American and Texan with lifelong history of telling the truth, a remarkable, persistent, courageous human being who speaks truth to power, who inspires us all to make the changes we must to keep our democracy and to keep our freedoms. Ladies and gentlemen, sisters and brothers, please join me in a warm and wonderful welcome for Texas son, Jim Hightower.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Richard, and all the hierarchy of the UU Church here for allowing scruffy Texas populace like myself to come into this hall to really return to this people's pulpit of a big-hearted, open-minded church like this. It just makes me happier than a flea at a dog show to be standing up here looking out at all of you Unitarian freethinkers, you Universalist truth seekers, as we begin to strategize, organize, and mobilize for another election season coming our way pretty soon. And admittedly, it's a pretty dicey time. Some pundits and irrepressible pessimists adhere to Woody Allen's prognosis. Mankind faces a crossroads, one path leads to despair and utter hopelessness, the other to total extinction. Let us pray we have the wisdom to choose wisely. Well, you'll be relieved to know that I'm not here to depress you this morning. Rather, I don't subscribe to the doomsday futures that a lot of people try to draw for progressivism in our state and in our country. Indeed, without being Pollyannish, I'm trying to bring a message of glad tidings to you here today, offering a vision of democratic progressivism over autocratic, theocratic plutocracy. My message is based on two realities. One, we've been here before. And two, we're on the move again. That's not something you hear enough of through our establishment media, but it is the truth. If you just go out among the people and talk to them and what's going on a local level, you'll be astonished at the progress that we are making. So let me start this morning, or this afternoon, I guess it is already, with the core issue that has framed both American and Texas politics from the very start: money and power. The issue comes down to this: too few people control too much of the money and power, and they use that control to get more money and power from us. That's the fight that we have been in from the very start of this country. It has been the issue that has created the rebellions of 1776, of the abolitionists, of the suffragists, of the populists, of labor, of civil rights, of women, and the environmental movement, etc. For just a little bit of recent, quasi-recent Texas history about our own progress that we've made against plutocratic rule, let me take you back to 1954. That was a year, and there was a time in which, big surprise, bankers and oil corporations controlled our state. And we had Alan Shivers was the governor at the time, a Dixiecrat bastard who represented the oil and gas people and the bankers as well. In fact, the people, progressives, had a phrase back then, a little ditty that they would recite, said the skunk is a stinky cat, but the stinkiest cat of all is a damned old shivercrat. So they had a little spunkiness to them. And they began to establish a movement, beginning strongly, coming together in 1954. Ralph Yarborough was running for governor, which he ran for governor about 47 times, as I recall. But he ran extremely well. It was my privilege to work for Ralph for a period of time when I lived in Washington, and he was a U.S. Senator there. But we had, it was not he that started the movement. It was not politicians that started it. It was rather just ordinary people and some extraordinary people. Think there's a name, Minnie Fisher Cunningham. Minnie Fish, she was known as, and she was a dynamo. She was a leading suffragette in America, leading suffrage fighter, and helped to found the suffrage movement here in Texas, and worked with Eleanor Roosevelt on doing it nationally. She was a pharmacist, the first pharmacist from the University of Texas Medical School, first woman pharmacist to get a degree there. She helped found the League of Women Voters. She ran for the U.S. Senate, the first woman to run for U.S. Senate in Texas. She then ran for governor and came very close to winning that race. But in doing so, even losing races make a difference, because she then rallied the progressive movement in our state to keep fighting, to do even more. And in '54, the powers that be among the progressive movement were grassroots people. And they realized that if they were going to have a progressive movement, they had to establish it themselves. So, for example, they created the Texas Observer in 1954. It was created to be a part of a movement. And at that time, the media powers, which were mainly the major newspapers at that time, paid no attention to progressive issues and causes and fights that people were making. Ralph Yarborough could get 2,000 people at a rally in Dallas, and the morning news in Dallas wouldn't have a word about it the next day. So the movement at the time, they created a slogan for the Dallas paper. It said, Dallas Morning News, if it happens in Dallas, it's news to us. And they organized at the most basic level. You might remember at that time, some of you, that you had to pay to vote, had a poll tax. And it amounted to about $25 in today's money. It's hard enough to get people to vote without saying, oh, by the way, you'll need to pay $25. So they organized to go door to door, particularly in African American communities in East Texas, paying people's poll taxes so that they could vote. Larry Goodman, who wrote the great book on populism, Democratic Promise, the Populist Moment in American History. Great professor over at Duke University for a long time, was an editor of the Texas Observer in his early days. Larry Goodman was one of those going door to door in East Texas, helping people get organized and paid, legitimized to vote. Labor organized all across the state and put money in and resources. Billy Carr in Houston, along with Chris Dixie and others, founded Harris County Democrats. That was based on a block-to-block campaign. They had block captains all over Houston. True grassroots organizing, not just speeches, but actually bringing people together and rallying them for a movement that would actually move. And they did. Out of that 1954 effort, Ralph Yarborough got elected, 57, to the U.S. Senate. Barbara Jordan was elected to Congress in Houston. Henry B. Gonzalez was elected in San Antonio. Bob Eckhart was elected, also out of Houston. A movement developed, and that movement governed together. And we did it again in 1982. You might recall, even much to the people's amusement, I was running at that time. Ann Richards was running for treasurer, Jimmy Maddox for attorney general, Gary Morrow for land commissioner, and me for agriculture commissioner. And we ran together as a team. And so as a result of that, instead of here's one candidate, we were able to go out together and say, we're not campaigning just for poor old Hightower here to get into office. We're campaigning to govern the state of Texas, to be able to form a government. And then having campaigned together, we trusted each other, and then we could govern together. We could work together in office using our different offices to help just ordinary people out there. So we had a ticket and then governed together. Now, here we are again, too few people controlling too much of the money and power, only more so than ever. I live here in Austin, but I live in South Austin, and we have a little different sassy attitude over there. Molly Ivins lived over there. John Henry Falk was born and raised over there in South Austin. Marcia Ball lives over there, and et cetera. So that's the kind of spirit that we try to reflect. In fact, our unofficial slogan on the South Side is, we're all here because we're not all there. And I think that is what brings us together as a progressive movement today, recognizing that the powers that be are not at all there in terms of understanding the essential democratic value of America, which is we're all in this together, actually all in this together, not as a phrase, but in terms of being able to get along and to build. My own father, who didn't know he had a political philosophy, but as he told me when I was growing up in Denison, Texas, he'd say to me periodically, Jim, everybody does better when everybody does better. That's what passes for political philosophy in Denison, Texas, and it's about as good a one as I have ever encountered. So here we are again, and when I say the powers that be, by the way, I'm talking about those who are knocking down the middle class, holding down the poor, and tearing down our basic rights in this country. I refer to them as the 6 Bs, the bosses, bankers, billionaires, big shots, bastards, and bullshitters, who seem to think that they're the top dogs and we're just a bunch of fire hydrants, out here in the countryside. So that's what's leading this progressive movement that always has led this movement and is now surfacing again. I just made a trip to Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's unusual to get a Texan to go to Oklahoma, but I did. Sucked it up and went. And I traveled with an old friend of mine who I also used to work with, Fred Harris, who was senator from Oklahoma for a long time, a terrific leader He's still cooking over in Albuquerque, so he came over and met up there in Tulsa to go to the Woody Guthrie Museum, and to go to the Bob Dylan Museum, and to go to the Greenwood Rising Museum, which is the testimonial about the Tulsa massacre of 1921. So Tulsa is alive. You know, it's a place you wouldn't think any of this could be happening, is happening. And so it was a pilgrimage, really, to touch some of the touchstones, like, of course, Woody Guthrie. You know, Woody had a song about outlaws, Pretty Boy Floyd the Outlaw. It had a verse in it that said, "As through the world I travel, I see lots of funny men. Some will rob you with a 6-gun and some with a fountain pen." It's the fountain pens who are doing the serious stealing in our society today. Narcissistic billionaires like Elon Musk and the Koch brothers and Jeff Bezos and et cetera. You know, they make not millions of dollars, but billions of dollars. Think of the difference there. Think of money in terms of if it were seconds, time. If you got 1 million seconds, that'll last you 11 days. If you got 1 billion seconds, that'll last you 31 years. That's the difference between billionaire and millionaire. It's extraordinary wealth that these people have amassed. And then, of course, finally, toward the end of their little existence, they dare to share some of it in philanthropy. They say, well, we are philanthropists, don't you know? We don't need to be taxed because we give away some of our money. Tell you a quick story about what the gods think of philanthropists. It's a story that Earl Long used to tell over in Louisiana when he was governor. Told about a rich man who died and tried to get into heaven. But if you go into that little Methodist church that I did in Denison, Texas, you know you just don't get into heaven. You got to appear at the pearly gates. And there's an angel outside going to review your life and decide, then turn back to St. Peter, who renders judgment of whether you get to come through or not. So here comes this rich man, and the angel looks his life over and says, my God, you never did no good for nobody, no way. What are you doing here? And he said, well, no, that's not entirely true. There was that time in 1924 when a beggar man was on the street and I gave him a nickel. And the angel said, so? He said, well, in 1934, there was a widow woman needed car fare home and I gave her a nickel. But that doesn't make up for a life of greed, the angel said. And the rich man said, well, now wait a minute, because I've got a consistent pattern of giving. In 1944, coming out of my bank at Christmas time, there was that Salvation Army kettle, and I put a nickel in there. And the angel turns back to St. Peter and says, what in the world are we going to do with this man? And St. Peter said, give him back his 15 cents and tell him to go to hell. Well, yet even today, some of our own Democrats in our state legislature and in the Congress want effectively to surrender, to accommodate the corporate superiority, the corporate theocracy, the corporate plutocracy. They want to go along to get along. I was talking to a friend of mine, Johnny Bryant, who was a great state representative from Dallas back when I was in office, and then he went to Congress and did other things. And then the last election cycle, he tried to get somebody to run for an open legislative seat in his district. Nobody would, so he did. So he's back in the legislature at 70-something years old. And he was a leader in their legislature, trying to whip the Democrats into action. But too many of them, he said, they got a subcommittee chairmanship, and they didn't want to offend the speaker or offend the governor, so they wouldn't speak out against the corporate order. So they're saying basically we can't win, we're doomed, so we got to just go along with it. I mean, if ignorance is bliss, they've got to be ecstatic, because let me tell you, Go tell the United Auto Workers that they can't win. We are winning. Sean Fain, the new president of the UAW, he wore a T-shirt that said, "Eat the rich." You know, that's a labor leader right there. Finally, school privatization. Why doesn't that pass? Abbott's pushing it ferociously. Lobbyists are pushing it. Big money. This Wilkes and what's his name, Dunn out of West Texas. These billionaires pouring money into it. Betsy DeVos, the DeVos family, Amway fortune. They're pouring tons of money into it. We need privatization of our schools. So we need school vouchers. But it's not passing. Why is it not passing? One, Democrats have actually stood up against that. But just as importantly, rural Republicans have stood up against it. So we have. And why is that? That's because, one, they believe in public education. They're products of it for the most part. Two, the public school is the biggest employer in their county. And most likely, they've got a spouse or a child or a brother-in-law or somebody working for that school district out there, and the school is a center of activity in the community. So it's community. It's not just a school to be toyed with by billionaires. So they stand against it. And we have had terrific leadership here with Gina Hinojosa and with James Tallarico leading against that effort there. But as this is a little clip that was out of the Chronicle, the Austin Chronicle, just this week, quoting a state representative out of Shepherd, Texas, a Republican, rural Republican over there, and he said it's nothing more than political theater what Abbott is doing. That Abbott's trying to build a national reputation of fighting. So hence, he lost it in the regular session, he lost it in the first special session, the second special session, the third special session, and now he's calling another one. And he is so dedicated to it that he, upon calling for the special session to pass school vouchers, he flew off to Israel. And then the legislature promptly adjourned for the weekend. So it's not going to happen. And as one guy says, that we will defeat it, this voucher scam, just like we have every single time since the first voucher was proposed in 1957. We've defeated it again and again and again because the people don't want it. and they will stand up to the lobbyists on something that is that important to them. We've got so many other. We just had the election, national election. And thank you, Ohio. Thank you, Kentucky. Thank you, Virginia, for standing up for women. But it wasn't. It wasn't just the abortion issue that we won on. We won also on the right wing's culture war, who are attacking the school teachers and attacking librarians and etc. There's this group called Moms for Liberty. It's the liberty to be bigoted. They put up all kinds of candidates for school board across the country. 70% of them lost. Apple Valley Independent School District in Minnesota, they had 4 Moms for Liberty candidates. None of them got more than 9% of the vote in their district. People are on to this. We only hear about the bad news. Moms for Liberty are going everywhere. They're running candidates. They're taking over school boards. Well, we're taking those school boards back. We had not been paying attention, and now we are paying attention. So we're recovering them. Right down the road, Bastrop, Texas, Elon Musk is building a monster facility down there, not just for his cars, but he's got a company, believe it or not, called Boring. and it carves tunnels, big, large tunnels, and it creates enormous waste. You're carving a tunnel, that stuff's got to go somewhere. And he says, no problem, I'll just put it in the Colorado River. It's right there, without a permit. And he's doing it. But a guy named Chap Asher has stood up down there. Chap Ambrose is his name. He stood up and he formed a group called Keep Bastrop Boring. And they've taken on Elon Musk. And so he's now under assault from, of all things, the Texas Environmental Quality Board, which doesn't take on corporations ever, but has been forced by the citizens of Bastrop to fight back on this. So Elon does not have. You've got also smart things. Julie Oliver and Mike Siegel formed a group called Ground Game Texas, I think it's called. Very, very good group. Yeah. And they organized something very clever in, I think it's 5 state legislative districts, no, 5 cities and counties, 5 counties here in Texas, to put marijuana, legalization of marijuana on the ballot in the last election. And all 5 won. There are places like Killeen, San Marcos, they're not the big cities. All 5 won. And more importantly, it increased the turnout in those districts dramatically. So we need, you know, my mother taught me years ago, said, 2 wrongs don't make a right. And I said, no, but 3 left turns do. We got to figure these things out, you know. So what, okay, we don't have statewide initiative, but what if we put abortion on the ballot in localities in our state? We could do that, and we would win, and we would increase turnout in so doing. So we got to find our avenues toward democracy that they've been shutting off and using to create either the theocracy or plutocracy there. So we've got that going. We've got, well, you've got one right here today, a flyer with you there about the Austin's dirty deal of backing the Fayette coal plant, and which creates some 25% apparently of the pollution in our air here in Austin, even though it's in a county or so away up in Fayette County. Public Citizen's been a leader in fighting that, and your church has been involved. A lot of members of your church have been involved in that. That's terrific. That's what democracy is. You can't just, well, we got Chip Roy, we got Ted Cruz, we got Greg Abbott. We can't win. Well, yes, you can. You just got to find your way to that victory, and it's not going to be through those Republican office holders. Ted Cruz is busy fighting Joe Biden over beer. He said, did you see that? He said Biden has come out to limit Americans to only 2 beers a month. And, you know, I hear Cruz speak, and I think, 100,000 sperm and you were the fastest? Unbelievable. Well, that's why we need you to push a renewed grassroots politics of intentionality. And that's an important word that we need to begin to use in our own organizing among ourselves and larger groups that we're reaching out to. Because the people who have achieved these victories in 1954, 1982, and are fighting winning local victories today, they did it because they set out to do it. They didn't set out to talk about it or to go hold an office. What use are you if you're just sitting there holding an office? You know, you need to put that office to work. And that's what a movement of intentionality is. That's what, for example, probably the most important presidential campaign in a long time was Jesse Jackson running for president in 1988. He intentionally set out to forge a multiracial populist coalition, taking on corporate power. And he did it. He formed it. It didn't continue for sordid reasons, but he made a deliberate campaign out of that. And the issues that were raised then, he changed the Democratic Party rules, for one thing, but more importantly, he changed the debate to where talking about corporate power was legitimate. because Bill Clinton and them didn't want to talk about corporate power because they were getting corporate money. So the intentionality of politics is important. You have to not just run for an office. You've got to have a plan of getting there, and that plan has got to include a racial majority within your own campaign. And if you put that together, then maybe racial minorities would begin to pay attention to what you're saying, because they would be the candidates, not just you. So that's the intentionality that we have to have in our politics. So I'm just here to say, one, thank you for the work that you are doing, and persevere, keep it up. My friend Willie Nelson said the early bird might get the worm, but it's the second mouse that gets the cheese. So you might not make it the first time, but if you keep building, then you get there, like those people who came together in the 1950s in a horrible, horrible time in our country, the McCarthy period, et cetera, and they built a movement that came together and worked. And by the way, that's another thing is we've got to, politics can't be just a bunch of committee meetings. We need to put the party back in politics, serve a little red wine and beer, and always have food and music. The battle against the culture wars, those moms for liberty, and et cetera, nobody is doing it better. Well, for example, the Austin Lounge Lizards have that great song, Jesus loves me, but he can't stand you. But Willie's got a new song out, says that you can't have your hatred and Jesus too. Says, and there are no exceptions to the rule. You can't have your hatred and Jesus too. So that's the power. That's real politics, and it draws people together because it's not a committee meeting or eloquent discourse about something or other. Rather, it's gut-level politics, and that's what I believe in and what we're trying to build here in Texas. So wherever you can find an avenue for you to poke into that, please do. You are doing so much good work already, but we got to do more of it. I'll leave you with this thought, and if you have some questions, I'd be happy to have somebody else address them. But my final word to you is from Louis Grizzard, the late great Southern humorist, who said something once that those of us in the South always know to be true, and that is that there's a big difference between being naked and being naked. Being naked means you have no clothes on. Being naked means you have no clothes on and you are up to something. So let's get naked together. Thank you very much. Glad to be with you.
Well, we're not through yet. That is, we're going to have a few minutes for questions. Before that, two things I'd like to say. One, that Jim mentioned 1954 in the Texas Observer. 1954 is when this public affairs forum started, and the first speaker we ever had at the Austin, at that point in time, Unitarian Church, the first speaker we ever had was the editor of the Texas Observer, very young Ronnie Duggar. Yeah. He was the first speaker we ever had.
Yeah, he's a jewel.
In addition, I would like to let you know that we're honored to have another progressive voice who's always fought for us and today represents a portion of us in the Texas legislature, and that is Representative Vicki Goodwin, who has arrived. So, and now we'll have a period of questions. If you have a question, please hold up your hand. I'll recognize you. And please keep your questions short. We had rather hear Mr. Hightower than you. And so please address your questions to him, and so we can get in as many questions as possible. And as I come to you, please identify yourself so we'll know who you are.
Hi, Chris Litterman. Question is about what you think about the Scenario Institute to repopulate private prisons with the homeless.
Say it again? I missed it.
What do you think about the proposal to repopulate prisons with the homeless?
I mean,
The private prisons that do not have the capacity, that have excess capacity now.
You know, Lily Tomlin has said, no matter how cynical you get, it's almost impossible to keep up. And that is one of them. That's as bad as Trump's new idea that we'll round up all the people who are not documented so far, including those who've been here for a long, long time, and then we'll put them in camps and then we'll export them. So, I mean, yeah, it's absurd. Absurd. And by the way, those of you who don't want to go another week without hearing from me, this little flyer has been passed out to you, and it's about my Substack. 2 months ago, I did not know what a Substack was, and now I am one. But it's an internet email newsletter. And so you just go to this website here, jimhightower.substack.com, and this flyer has that, and you can sign up for it. And it is free. Imagine that, free, absolutely free. There's a pay possibility down the road, but you don't have to do that ever. So twice a week you'll get an email from me about some issues, and then you will also we have a thing we do on Fridays called Signposts, where we point to people around the country who are doing really good stuff, or groups or individuals, and that you can join. So we try to not just stir people up, but to get them focused and doing something.
For years, Jim had published, as many of you probably subscribe, the Hightower Lowdown.
Yes.
And so this has replaced that, and so now here he's moved into the digital age. So please sign up for his Substack.
Hello, Jim. I'm convinced that the biggest problem we're dealing with is big money in politics.
Yes.
What are we going to do about it?
Well, first we've got to we have to take over the Supreme Court, and to do that we've got to have a politics that elects people who are willing to do that. But we're making strides there. Senator Whitehouse has been a great leader in the Congress on that issue. But there are great groups too that work on this full time. But you know, part of it is we can do a lot at a local level. We passed a finance program here, a money program here, what is it, 20 years ago, something like that. Is a group, had the best group name I've ever heard. It said, Austinites for a little less corruption. And they imposed some campaign limits. And that was done by ordinary people. More than about 75% of the media opposed it, the politicians opposed it, at all levels opposed it, and 75% of the people voted for it. So it is an issue that people care about, and has become even worse. Charles Koch just recently, in the last month or so, gave $5 billion to his political organization. $5 billion to one political organization that is based on trying to create a plutocracy in America. Anyway.
Jim, my name's Sam Duckworth. Background's mechanical engineer, and I'm still working in the business.
All right.
I spent a lot of my life in steam turbines and gas turbine manufacturing, development with General Electric. Question I have is whether or not, or why do you think that people that could make the change at Fed have not changed from coal to gas?
Can you restate it?
Yes, the Fayette power plant currently still burns huge amounts of coal. As an interim measure, why have they not done the interim step of converting to natural gas?
Well, natural gas has its own problems, but fundamentally, that's why. Well, and Austin is doing a decent job, at least, on wind and solar power, and that has got to be the future. I just did a piece, one of these little Substack things, on a group in Vermont that the surprising renewable energy initiative coming from the most unlikely of sources, which is the largest electric utility in Vermont. It's led by a woman, and she saw that it's absurd to try to keep building these massive power plants and extending the lines that have got to be extended across, and that keep, with any snowstorm, which they have a lot of there in Vermont, they fall down all the time. People are without power, et cetera, et cetera. So she started a program. The utility is going to put a generator in every home and every school and every business in Vermont. So they'll have their own power source that's battery powered. And it will store energy in good times, and then it'll make energy available in bad times. So that's the kind of thinking that we have to have, I think, that is based on, it is much, much cheaper for the utility, and it'll be much, much cheaper for the families. And in particular, it'll be much cheaper in terms of if power goes out, you got a medical device, your refrigerator's gone, your heat is gone. We just went through that, 2 years ago here in Texas, where thousands of people died. They said it was hundreds, but it's actually thousands when you actually tally it up. So that's the kind of thinking that I think that we have to have. But it's got to be beyond natural gas, in my view.
Hi, Jim. Tim Mahoney here. I was just wondering if you, Representative Goodwin, last session and this session is going to be proposing a Texas constitutional amendment to give people a right for a clean environment. Don't you think that is the kind of thing that would rally Texans?
To get people to listen for what?
A constitutional right for a clean environment.
Yes, yeah. And there's a step in that direction that's kind of interesting. It's called Rights of Nature. And it is a movement that is spread around the world, but in cities like Toledo, Ohio, and Orlando, Florida, where nature itself has legal rights. So right now, nature has no right. If we are harmed by poison water, well, we can sue the source of that harm, but the river or the lake can't sue. But what if they could? So that's what they did in Toledo. The lake there, which is Lake Erie? I don't know. Anyway, one of the big lakes, horribly polluted. People sickened, business lost, et cetera, et cetera. So they put a thing on the ballot, an initiative on the ballot in Toledo, that said that the lake itself has rights. And if it is harmed, then it can sue the outfit causing the harm. Well, how can it sue? The same way you can sue, it gets a lawyer. and it passed, like 80% of the people approved it in Toledo. Same thing in Orlando, the home of Disney World down there. People were getting furious that the lakes, that a lot of water around there, lakes and rivers and watersheds and et cetera, were being poisoned. And nobody would do anything about it. The environmental organizations wouldn't touch it. The governor, of course, was not going to offend the corporate powers that were causing the pollution. So nothing was happening. So they put an initiative on the ballot there. And they sort of thought, well, it would be a learning experience for voters to have to at least hear this issue. 80% of the people of Orlando voted for that. And that's a county that has 1/3 Democrat, 1/3 Republican, and 1/3 independent. So this movement has enormous power. Ecuador has put it in their national constitution that nature itself has rights. There's a tree in, I think it's not Sarasota, Florida, but in Florida, in a town that is known as the tree that owns itself, because somebody years ago in the 1920s had very fond memories of this very old and large oak tree, and so put it in his will that he was leaving the tree to itself when he died. And the city council embraced that. And then in, I don't know, in the 1960s or somewhere, a storm finally toppled this more than 100-year-old tree. So the people got together, found trees that had been grown in other yards from the acorn of that tree, and replanted it. And it is now the son of the tree that owns itself. So it's another way of thinking about these things, and it is a power lever that, as Tim was pointing out there, is available, and that the people will support.
Sir, my name is Ellen Murray, and I've
Yes.
been a fan of
know
yours
you.
and Ann Richards since the beginning, but I'm from Louisiana.
Yes.
And a lot of people don't know. We think of it as a red state today, but a lot of people don't know that when Eugene V. Debs, the socialist candidate for president, ran in 1912, North Louisiana voted socialist,
Yeah.
coming out of the populist movement.
Yeah.
And so I think the point of this is, if you frame it the right way,
Yeah.
if you get people to look at it in a different way than maybe like what we're doing it now, people will vote.
Yeah.
And they'll vote the right way. If North Louisiana can go socialist, I mean, anything's possible.
Yeah, right. Well, even Oklahoma, I've got to say, they had a majority in the state legislature that was socialist. And the Farmers Union helped to organize that. This is in the 1910s and 1920s back there. But it was remarkable. And your point that people, if we phrase it right, people will vote for it. But also, we've got to go there. You see all these Democratic pundits and party leaders at a national level wringing their hands on rural America, and there's a contingent within the Democratic Party hierarchy that says we should just completely write off rural America. It's gone red, and so we just got to give it up and focus on the cities. Well, they haven't been to rural America, and that's why people are rebelling. They feel left out. They feel ignored. They feel insulted, basically. Nobody comes. And I've gone over to East Texas recently, to Tyler, over there, and people are saying, where the hell are the Democrats? Nobody comes here, so we've turned Republican. In my campaigning days, to tell you a quick story, it's got a nasty word in it, but I think you're adults, we can handle it. In my campaigning, I went to Tyler and had a lawyer was showing me around the courthouse, because you could go see the county clerk, county treasurer, and county commissioners, and et cetera, and they would let you meet their staff and hand out your brochures and things. And so I hit the Smith County Courthouse there in Tyler, but pretty much everybody was gone because we were 5 minutes after noon. So lunchtime. So my lawyer friend said, let's go up on the 5th floor. There's this old judge up there, a district judge, and you can talk to him. Said, but don't dump your whole load on him, because he's pretty conservative, So this is when I was running for railroad commissioner, and I sat across from the judge. He had his feet propped up on his desk, his hat tilted back, and his perfect Texas symbol of the establishment power at the time. And so I'm doing my little routine and said, well, Judge, I'm complaining a little bit about these utilities, these gas utilities, because they're not being entirely fair with the consumer. And the judge's feet fell off the table and hit the floor, and he leaned into me, and I thought, oh, hell, even that was too much for him. And he said, Hightower, in your private moments, wouldn't you say they're fucking us? I said, yes, sir, I have said that. So you can't make assumptions about who people are. You got to go find them and see what they think about these things.
Hi, I'm Dale Beulah. I noticed that in our recent election that the amendment to allow judges to live forever went down. And do you think there's a chance that we could replace some of these Supreme Court judges that are approaching the 75 year of age?
Yeah, I think we can go at them, and the way to go at them is with the young people. Organize young lawyers. They want to be that judge. and there he is squatting down for a lifetime, you know. So yeah, I think that's a real issue, and particularly with young people. And by the way, we're not, young people are alive and well, and they are feisty. If you want to deal with climate change, organize 8-year-olds and 10-year-olds and 14-year-olds. They're on the move, and they have a sort of authority that even middle-aged people don't have. They're speaking about their future and not just generally about the future. And so if I was running on any kind of platform dealing with climate change, I would try to form a children's brigade to lead that charge.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Jim Bryce. I just wanted to ask you, told us about your Substack, but I know you're on freespeech.org along with Tom Hartman and others. Could you tell us the other places we might be able to get the word from you on a daily basis?
You can hear me twice a week at least on Co-op Radio right here in Austin, Texas, 91.7 on your dial. It's a great station. It has fabulous music, by the way, just kind of across all kinds. And multi-ethnic, very, very diverse station. So I'm proud to be on it for a long time. And it is a cooperative. Members get to vote on programs and et cetera. And in fact, they will train you to be a disc jockey on it. And none of the disc jockeys are paid. It's a total volunteer operation. There's one or two administrative staff to hold it together that are paid a little bit. But that's a great radio station. So I'm on about 150 radio stations across the country. But again, if you go to jimhightower.com, there's kind of the whole thing, and it'll link you into the beauty of the Substack, if you have an email, is boom, there it is, whether you want it or not. Another thing from Hightower.
Excuse me, my name is Fred Higgins, and I've considered you a reliable source of information for over 4 decades. But I'm concerned about the misinformation that seems to be expanding daily. And now with the advent of artificial intelligence, what advice or thoughts do you have for us to beware?
I think everyone should just subscribe to the Hightower Substack and would clear that up. But artificial intelligence, I think, is a huge threat on a lot of levels, but certainly on misinformation, because it will come across as entirely credible. It will come across as your mother calling you. It's just, I don't know what to do about it. I'm on the board of Public Citizen National Organization, and they are grappling with it. And they're one of the best, in my view, the best public interest organization that grapples with it, because they really do take on power, and more often than not, they win. So it's the only board I'm on, is that one, and for those reasons. But they haven't figured it out either. But they are at least acknowledging that this is not a bright, shining future that we have in this device. Rather, it is a threat to democracy itself. And you think of all the tyrants in history in this country, Father Coughlin and, Rush Limbaugh, et cetera, what they could have done with artificial intelligence. And the new incarnations of them will do it. So I think talk of regulation is not going to work. I mean, they eat regulation. They hire people who eat regulations. So we've got to deal with some form of outlawing it. And I don't know if that'll work either. So again, obviously I don't have an answer, but I am among many, and I hope you, who are grappling with it and raising it in every little forum that you can, that this is a very, very dangerous thing for America, for the world, really.
Hi, I'm Ken Pfluger. I live in Tarrytown. As you know, the city of Austin is considering reducing, or perhaps strongly considering reducing density, and there are some valid environmental reasons for doing so. Yet, many of my neighbors who would consider themselves environmentalists oppose higher density. What do I say?
It's got to be a diverse solution. We can't have one plan, we're going to take your backyard, and put 2 houses on it. But that option should be there. And encouragement for developers to do some more density. I live in South Austin, as I mentioned, in the old Swisher addition, and it's been a neighborhood of cottages and old places. My house is 1900, was a farmhouse basically, and now the density movement has come in, but not severely. So there are properties. There's one right across the street from me, was a Montessori school, now is a single-family house plus another house behind it. So I don't object to that. They've worked it out. The design fits in with the neighborhood. They're a part of the neighborhood. So what I will object to are developers just doing it to make a buck, and they're all drawing Wall Street money and don't live here in Texas, much less Austin.
Hello, Mr. Hightower. Hello, everyone. I am Orville Morales. I'm actually from New Jersey. I've only been in Texas for like 10 days in my life, and that's all been the last 2 years. And as many of you know, New Jersey is a dependently blue state. However, just like Mr. Hightower mentioned, we do have some leadership that prefers to work with corporations there as opposed to the people. So we do struggle with a lot of inequalities there. But when we think about Texas, oh, it's red and it's all, those are the worst of the worst. But I've learned firsthand how much of a lie that is. That's a perception that media really pushes. So what message do you give us who really see that as Texas goes, the United States goes? And if y'all turn blue, it changes everything everywhere else. What message do you have for us as we hope for the best for you?
It's the message of the whole peroration I've been offering here today. Is we have to establish the progressivism that is within the majority in our state. But too many of our politicians are sitting around, or our political leaders, I'll say, waiting on demographics to change Texas. That's a losing period. We're not going to live long enough for that. Rather, we've got to be organizing. There are 50 counties in Texas that have no Democratic Party chair in them, and much less a Democratic committee in them. So there's no presence. When Hillary Clinton ran for president in 2016, you had to pay to get a yard sign. They charge $5 to get a yard sign. Yard signs are symbols, particularly in red areas, because if this person over here put a yard sign up for Hillary Clinton, well, I'm for her too, so maybe I could put one up. And it builds. It's just the cheapest little d democratic tool that there is in politics is a simple yard sign, like a bumper sticker would be the same thing. But there are counties that the people are afraid to do it. Democrats are in hiding. Yet, even in the reddest of counties, about a third of the people are Democrats. But they're not voting. You know, Beto O'Rourke campaigned in every county in Texas. That's a chore. But he would go in to a rural county, create excitement, big turnout. There'd be 500 people in one of those red rural counties turn out for a Beto O'Rourke talk. But then he would go on to the next county and nothing. There was no infrastructure left behind to work with the people then, organize the committees, do the grassroots work that you've got to do in politics, and turn people out. So that's what I'm saying, and that's the answer to you, is we have to build that infrastructure back and the politics back. The people are there, just as I was saying about the rural people, rural Americans. Farmers know what's wrong. Farmers know that John Deere tractor is a monopoly that cheats them on the price of the tractor and then says that it owns the tractor. It owns the operating system of the tractor. And so you're not allowed to work on your own tractor. You can't try to repair it. You've got to take it to a dealer. Well, the dealer's 3 counties away now. So you got to leave your crop, go 3 counties away, leave your tractor for however long, and et cetera. So they're ready to talk about that, just as they were with rural schools. We've got issues we can go to the people with, and the people are waiting on somebody to come start talking about those things. And corporate power is central to that politics, because the people have no truck for corporate power. They've seen what it is, and they've experienced it firsthand. So that should be the theme of our politics, in my view. That, again, the concentration of money and power in too few hands has got to be the theme of the Democratic Party, and then pretty much everything flows from that. And then we've got to go to the people with it, literally, not as a get out the vote operation in the last 6 weeks of a campaign. You got to go live there. And that's what, what's his name from Pennsylvania, this senator, the new senator from there, tall guy. Yeah, yes. That's what he did. He was lieutenant governor, and apparently in Pennsylvania, lieutenant governor doesn't have anything to do. So he just went to rural counties again and again and again and worked with people, developed a credibility and a presence. And then that cut into the loss margin in those rural counties for a Democrat, and he was able to win the U.S. Senate off of that. That's the arithmetic of it, and it's pretty straightforward, but it's based on being honest with people and being with people.
I think we have time for one final short question.
I walked in late just to hear you, Tom Baker. I heard you say Denison, Texas. I started my life there in 1956, so it was good to hear that.
Yeah.
Just a question or 2 questions. Have you ever thought of a syndicated column like Molly Ivins did until she passed? And have you ever thought any more about running again for any office?
Yeah. I've not thought about running. I'm better at running my mouth, I think, than running. So I keep doing that and encouraging other people to run. I'm going to be involved in a couple of city council races here. It doesn't have to be big offices. Little offices add up to real power. So I don't intend to run, but I intend to continue to get others to run and to try to fix a Democratic Party that is an organizing party. And that's the missing link right there. And if we do that, and then also the responsibility of a Democratic committee is to organize, but it's also to recruit good candidates. Too many of our statewide candidates that end up running on our ticket aren't even Democrats. And they have no connection with anything or anybody, and so they're not going to win. So why are we wasting our time on that? But you can win those offices, as we showed in Texas Department of Agriculture. We were able to make significant changes in there. And so then the other part of your question was about another column like Molly Ivins had. Well, I'm not Molly Ivins, so I'm not able to have a column like she had, but I do have a column. But there are no longer newspapers, much less columns. And we see it in this thing that calls itself the American Statesman here, which is a Gannett newspaper, which is owned by a Japanese bank, Japanese conglomerate. And they have no interest in Austin. They've never been to Austin. And they've shrunk the newspaper to less than USA Today, which is hard to imagine you could actually do that. But they still have 3 or 4 really top-notch reporters, but for the most part, they don't have beats anymore. You know, they don't cover the legislature with any kind of regularity, much less city council and all the other governing entities. So the newspaper need is huge, and the good news there is that there are groups that are coming together, a lot of young people groups, and a lot of philanthropist types are coming together to forge a new forms of local newspapers. Gannett owns like 2,000 newspapers, and it's all formulaic. Our paper is not made here. It's made, I think it's in Ohio, where they've got the makeup thing. So we had one day where our weather page here was Oklahoma's weather. That cost them quite a few subscriptions right there. So that's another of those issues that we don't have the answer of yet, but people are working on it right now. And there's a group in Maine that bought 5 daily. Maine has 6 daily newspapers. This group, a nonprofit group, bought 5 of those newspapers. And then are turning them over with expertise, to local nonprofit groups to run, so they can have their own newspaper again. And that's the kind of thinking that we've got to have.
Jim, thank you so very much for being with us today.
Thank you all.
Thank you for your lifetime of populist strength and support. Thank you for reminding us of our populist past today and of our populist and people's future. Thank you very much.